Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight. As always, covering all the news in professional wrestling live from No Sale Studios. I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro, and joined on this great Monday with the one bad Chad himself. What's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. Big coming out of a big SummerSlam weekend. I'm hyped to talk about it. Want to get your thoughts and see what everybody else is thinking. Jump in the comments, guys.
Biggest party of the summer. It's usually at the end, but it feels like, for me, it always was the exclamation point on the summer growing up. But now we have, a few more weeks, and it feels like, not to make this about AEW, but All In feels like it's going to be that exclamation part of the summer. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I thought SummerSlam kind of lived up, and we'll get into that and what our big stories, but it's always fun. SummerSlam always has this special feel about it. And lately, the last 2 years in the stadium shows, I thought the spectacle, it's been on par at WrestleMania last year, Nashville this year in Detroit. I thought it lived up, and they're really stepping up their game as far as pageantry goes.
Oh yeah, they're making it feel big. They're getting into bigger venues, so always a good thing when you can get present it in a bigger way, bigger than what we're used to. I feel like.
I got to ask you, Saturday, and we had a lot of wrestling on Saturday, and you can even break it down. We had more wrestling with New Japan Pro Wrestling doing the G1 Climax tournament, which of course we'll get through that in our quick hitters. But watching live for the, at the Chad house, what are you guys doing? You watching Collision live, watching SummerSlam live? Did you have both going at one time?
I'm watching Collision live, and I watched SummerSlam Sunday. But I stay off the news so I can take it in live, at least in my own mind. So, but yeah, I was watching Collision, had some things going on earlier in the day and later. So I would have laptop up with probably the network on or Peacock on it with something on the TV too. But this year I went Collision over SummerSlam.
Yeah, the thing is, too, Saturday is a different spot for WWE pay-per-views. You've seen that recently, and I think they've identified it using the UFC model of, man, you get the more maximum amount of people watching on a Saturday. To me, traditionally, I know it's, going back in the day, Sundays were always the pay-per-view day. So took an adjustment. I woke up on Saturday morning like, today is SummerSlam, right? And it just felt weird, but there it was. And we had Collision going head-to-head with it, but we're not going to sit here and compare those numbers. I think everyone was getting a little bit ahead of themselves, being like, oh my God, they only did 388,000 people on Collision. Well, what did you expect? Come on. It's a Saturday night against a premier live event, as they put it. It's apples and oranges, guys. Come on.
Was that the number that came out for Collision?
I believe so. That was the number I saw on Twitter. Yeah.
Whew. That's a drop from 700, but yeah, to be expected.
Absolutely. And I don't know if that accounts for all the DVRs and people watching in advance and consumption on Instagram or Twitter. So I know people are so obsessed with the numbers when they drop and they want to compare it. But as we know, the Nielsen ratings are archaic. And, we'll talk about in the big story number one about what they did streaming wise, because it was very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get into big story number one right here.
Big stories. Story one.
Story number one, we had SummerSlam from Detroit, Ford Field, the home of the Detroit Lions. And before we get into the action to break down, I referenced before just the streaming stuff. And we saw a lot of them. They've been doing the pressers and releasing statements. And they're always going to say how profitable they are and how well they're doing. But according to WWE, SummerSlam 2023 set records for WWE in multiple areas of their business. So this morning they had released that saying this was the most watched and highest grossing SummerSlam of all time. It set new SummerSlam records in viewership, live gates, sponsorship revenue, and also merchandise. So according to all the numbers, Chad, the gate was 8.5 million, which is the best number for any non-WrestleMania event in WWE history. They also said it was the most watched SummerSlam of all time. It was among the 3 highest viewerships for any WWE event that's ever aired on Peacock since their deal started. We also talked about that sponsorship deal. We saw that Slim Jim, we're back in the wrestling game, $7 million for that. Highest number for any non-WrestleMania event as well. I don't think Slim Jim paid for $7 million, but altogether, everything like Cricket Wireless. I think there was another match for the Gunther and Drew McIntyre match. Forget the such a good job advertising. I don't remember their name, but it was on the apron, all that kind of stuff. But man, a lot of money coming in for WWE, and the rich get richer and all that good stuff. But they're thriving, man. And it could be, on the backs of the bloodline or whatever they want to say it is, but they're doing really, really well.
Yeah. And I never really take all of that hyperbole about we're doing the biggest numbers, we're selling the most merch, we're breaking venue records. Of course you are. Tickets are more expensive. it's way more easy to access pay-per-views or PLEs, whatever you want to call it now. So of course you are. You're comparing this to SummerSlams. If you go back a good ways, like those were pay-per-view models where you were having to shell out pay-per-view prices to watch these events, where now you pay $9.99 a month for Peacock, you can just tune in. So I think it's a lot cheaper on a pay-per-view level, which makes more people buy it. More people have the access to watch it. So I never at this point, if you're not breaking records in your WWE with the inflation of prices, ticket prices, all of that, like something would be really wrong. So I'm always just kind of like, of course you're doing better.
It's also state-run press. I'm always a little bit hesitant to believe when it comes out of their camp, like we are breaking numbers, we are doing all this stuff. When it's coming from the propaganda machine, it's not like CNN or CNBC or whatever news outlet you want to reference is reporting these numbers. It's coming from in-house. I understand they open up their books to investors and they also open up their books to stockholders and all the stuff that they do. But I don't know. When it comes from in-house, they always it's like the attendance record. You know what I mean? Like they always kind of inflate it by 10,000, becomes tongue in cheek. It almost becomes part of the game now, where SummerSlam 92 wasn't exactly what they said it was. WrestleMania 3 wasn't exactly what they said it was. They always pad those numbers, but conspiracy theorists be damned. I think there's a lot to be said of when it comes from in-house, you got to be a little bit skeptical.
100%. It's like a politician telling you that the economy is doing great, and you look around and you're paying fucking $10 for a package of hamburger meat. Like it's the same thing. Like I don't buy what they're pushing. Honestly, like ratings and all of that. Like, of course we want ratings to be good because we want wrestling to be successful so it continues and we get to watch it. But I don't get too caught up in numbers. If they're putting out good product, that's all that matters to me.
So the product on the screen, Detroit, I thought it was an entertaining night of wrestling. Let's go through some of the stuff here and break down some of the stuff. Of course, we talked about SummerSlam, the Battle Royal. They kind of put all the hodgepodge of guys that weren't on the card, guys like AJ Styles. Omos made his return. But of course, this was the showcase chat of LA Knight. And I understand people said, be patient for LA Knight. They're going to push him and all that stuff. But the one thing they're looking at from LA Knight is that he's getting a great reaction. The live crowd was very behind him. He got an enormous pop. He did get the win here. This is his first pay-per-view win ever for him, and it's a big deal. But I kind of volley to you and ask you, is this kind of much ado about nothing? Is this the push we're waiting for? Is this just WWE dragging their feet on another act that's getting over organically with the crowd?
I mean, I guess it's a start, I guess it's a start. He got a battle royal win at one of the major events, whatever that means.
Congrats, my
win.
dog.
Yeah, congrats. They could have put it on someone else and swerved us. We know how Vince likes to take the other direction sometimes, but I mean, yeah, it's big for LA Knight. I think moving forward, hopefully this kind of pushes him in a direction of getting a little more attention. Word is Vince is a fan of his, which is a good thing. It looks like Triple H is a fan of him. They're taking the long road with him. I do think there's a contingent of fans out there that are selling this guy short. I keep hearing people saying like he's not as over as what people are making him out to be. I'm like, what are you watching? This guy is as over gets in my book. As far as someone coming up who hasn't had that big feud, who hasn't had that big storyline, for him to be as over as he is, given what he's been given, I think it's extremely impressive. Like, imagine if this guy was in a just compelling feud with someone. The sky's the limit. I think the guy has it, and I think he has it the way WWE wants a top guy to have it. Kenny Omega, big over guy, but I wouldn't say he's a WWE type of guy. I could see them screwing him up in a lot of ways. He doesn't have that mic charisma per se that an LA Knight has. But when I look at LA Knight, I see someone completely molded to take off in the way WWE likes their superstars to be.
Yeah, and they got to be careful too, because we talked about this on the exact same show. We talked about Sami Zayn, his organic rise, and look at him at this point. He's still very over, gets great reactions, but Kevin Owens is hurt now. He's the tag team champions. What's going on with that? And you didn't pull the trigger on Sami, and now you have another guy who's a tier below the top of the card. And I fear with LA Knight, you can give him all these wins, and Sami Zayn had that mini push on the rise to take it on Roman in Montreal, but eventually you didn't actually go all in on the guy, and now you don't have that main event you could have had. I understand Sami Zayn is a main eventer. You put him on, and you get him hot for a sec and put some momentum behind him, he could main event a pay-per-view, but it's not to the level it could have been. Same thing with LA Knight. You give him these menial wins instead of going all in. And I understand seeing the Judgment Day story play out. I understand why the briefcase is on Damian Priest, because they're putting the love and attention. Of course, we'll talk about the finish with Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. They're putting the love and attention that was similar to the Bloodline into the Judgment Day. They're almost making a carbon copy of this well-intertwined story with all these emotions and all that. But with LA Knight, sometimes people get over organically. And if you waste it on just, people see through this. For a battle royal to be your win here, and that's a good moment, and he gets up and whatever, it means nothing. I mean, the thing is LA Knight going to be the guy to beat Roman Reigns? If you're going to go all in on a guy, then you should go all in. And I see he's not going to be that guy. And shout out to the debate you guys just had about these guys that are kind of floating in the middle. If they're not involved in the main top of the card, maybe they go after Seth Rollins' whatever participation trophy, as we call it. There is a lot to be said about the stifle nature of the push up the card, because a guy like LA Knight could be that guy, but that wasn't the story from the beginning. It's Cody. That's Cody. And I don't think they should pivot. Don't get me wrong. They should not go with LA Knight.
No.
But if this was WWF 1998, 1996, 1997, the desperation kind of puts you in that different direction. So
yeah. And honestly, man, anytime you're booking anyone, you're gambling long term. Like with Cody right now, as much as we're like, yes, Cody is the one to take the title off of Roman at WrestleMania 40 or whenever it is, that could be the plan. But even with that, you're gambling. There's always injuries, man. This is a tough business. At any moment, something could happen to completely disrupt those plans. And that's a place where LA Knight kind of has to take that into consideration. You never know what can happen, man. If somebody goes down and they need someone to step up, the best available guy is a healthy guy.
Yeah.
So, I'm always leery of long term. How many times have we seen someone go down? They crowned Finn Balor first Universal Champion. Next night, he's on Raw giving up the title. Yep. So you can't really plan. You want to have long-term plans, but you got to have these guys like LA Knight. You got to have these kind of break glass if needed guys ready and primed up to jump into that spot if the worst case scenario happens. So it wasn't like he got crowned and he's the next guy in this battle royal, but at least it's a W, and we'll see where he goes.
I mean, they also have the issue with the IC titles just as locked up too. So it's not like you drop him with the IC title and let him have a run with that. I guess you can make the argument, put him on Raw with the US title, have him take it from Theory, but I don't know. They're at a spot, and I think it's a good thing. They have a lot of locked things at the top of the card, and guys that are just cemented. Guys like Gunther and Roman Reigns feel insurmountable at this point. And I guess the bottom of the card, the guys that are organically rising, they get knocked back down the mountain because they're not ready and they don't want to push them. And I ate some crow on the Sami Zayn thing. I was wrong. I think they made the right choice by having it be Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania. I thought it was an amazing spectacle, just the match itself and the finish, whatever you want to say about it. But I don't know if it would have been the same with Sami Zayn if they would have pivoted. So I trust the process, as we'll talk about throughout the rest of this card. There is a need to trust where they're going because they have a little bit of a track record over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But let's go with Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. Not much to be said about this match that mimicked a MMA match. This is an awkward thing when they try to do an MMA match in a kind of scripted environment. This was an attempt to put Shayna Baszler over huge here. She choked out Ronda Rousey. We got Ronda Rousey saying she really has nothing else to be doing in WWE. So it feels like this is her heart out, as Meltzer was referencing in all the newsletters. Thoughts on this match? And did you feel like Shayna Baszler walked out a little bit better or just kind of the same?
I felt kind of the same, man. I thought she would get a bigger rub. I mean, choking out Ronda. Is this the first time Ronda's been tapped out in WWE?
It's a very good question. I would say no. I would say, actually, no, you're probably right. Because if you think about her feud with Charlotte and Becky, I think she was pinned on both those occasions. So
yeah, I don't think she's ever been submitted. I might be wrong, but I mean, that is a huge thing, but And I love the video package to this match. I thought it was very well done. But Ronda, man, fans just turned off to her. And I
Yeah.
felt like I could feel it in this match. And fans were so over Ronda that I don't think it put Shayna in a position that maybe some people thought she should be in, getting a win like this over Ronda. But it was a pretty forgettable match. I can't stand fake MMA stuff. Like, if you're going to wrestle. If you're going to go fight MMA, fight MMA. I hate when they try to do that. I never connect to it.
Yeah, they've attempted to do it multiple times. Obviously, Brawl for All was the real portion of it, but we had the Lions Den match with Shamrock and Owen Hart and Dan Severance. You're right. Like, there's something to be said about have them have a submission match and have them go out this way and choke Ronda out. And because MMA just looks sloppy, and there's a nature of MMA that is inherently going to be disorganized because it's a battle of wills.
Right.
And you didn't see that here. Obviously, Ronda had to coexist with Shayna in the ring, and I don't know. I don't think it did anything for Shayna, and maybe going away from this, they wanted to put her over the best way possible. I thought it was a miss here, though.
Yeah, big miss for me. I mean, anytime you get two people that came from that world, Shayna and Ronda were mixed martial artists, and then they come into wrestling and they're learning a new skill. Shayna has more history with pro wrestling than Ronda because she came up training under Josh Barnett and the whole catch as catch can system. Ronda, it's fairly new for her in the last 5 or 6 years. But so you've got people coming from a profession where you don't pull your punches, having newly learned an art where you pull your punches, and now you're asking them to go back and mimic the real. I just think in their brains it had to be kind of a cluster, just trying to fake what they know as real.
Yeah, it's like having Kurt Angle work a amateur wrestling match and like, all right, you can't win. Like, we're gonna have you get like, I understand that the spirit of it would really put someone over. Say Chad Gable in a worked match beats Kurt Angle in an amateur wrestling match, which Kurt Angle would never agree to, I'm sure. But that type of spirit where it could theoretically be something that was really awesome. But kudos to Ronda for allowing it to happen. I mean, understanding the world that WWE lives in, especially as she's moving towards wanting to potentially make an MMA return, be willing to do that finish. It just shows how much Shayna means to her. Because, I mean, optically, it is a work. Everybody knows that. But just seeing it is different than just kind of hearing about it, I guess.
Yeah, it's big on Ronda. I mean, to put her friend over, it makes sense. I mean, her and Shayna are close. And Ronda typically doesn't exit companies in a great way with companies or fans. Well, I shouldn't say companies. She left with Dana White. They were cool. But the fans, when she left UFC, fans did not appreciate her because she turned her back on the fans. In a lot of ways, how she kind of did with WWE the first time she left. I think fans were just over it, but it was big on her to kind of at least try to elevate Shayna on her exit.
So speaking of someone who's just come in and kind of made their mark, Logan Paul took on Ricochet in the opening contest of the night. Logan Paul got the win here. I think we both predicted that this is the first chance they really got Logan Paul to be able to win a match because he's been involved in top things. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. It's a big thing that he got a win here. Good opening match. I mean, if you're into the high spots level type of work, I mean, they tried their best to set the pace. I thought the crowd was into this. It was, I mean, for Logan Paul being, how many matches does he have at this point? 5 where he's at.
Yeah.
To have the poise this dude has is insane. They did box the Spanish fly spot again, not to nitpick, but it may not work for these guys. But there were some awesome spots in this match. Ricochet, of course, larger than life as far as in-ring goes. I thought it was a good match, but the story really was after, where he made it to Dallas just in time to be in Jake's corner for the boxing match against Nate Diaz. And apparently, if you see him in the crowd, he's still wearing his wrestling gear with a t-shirt on because he didn't have time to get changed to Dallas. So money can get you from Detroit to Dallas pretty quickly in an airplane. So open the night in Detroit for a wrestling match. And there he was to see Nate Diaz, take the loss to his brother Jake, which was pretty cool to see on ESPN, all that going on in the same night. Pretty crazy.
Oh yeah. I was pulling for Nate Diaz. I'm a big Nate Diaz fan, but I love Nate because mixed martial artist, goes into Jake Paul's realm, and he even managed to get a little standing guillotine chokehold on him and for a picture op. And in the build up to the match, he was like, "You wouldn't beat me in a real fight." So he kind of had it out. The fact that he went 10 rounds, though, to a unanimous decision, that made it look better for Nate than Jake. But to Logan and Ricochet, good high spot match. I thought the finish was kind of shitty. I wasn't really
agreed.
into the finish was kind of to me, but good way to get Logan some heat. Good way for him to get that win. I wish Samantha Irvin would have put some stank on that announcement of him winning. Not did her. I know she's got to be professional and announce it her way, but I was wanting to see some story there where she wouldn't announce him or announced him very unenthusiastically. But it was a good match. Logan's great. He's talented. He hits that buckshot over the top rope onto the floor. Looked a little sloppy, but when you're used to high spot matches, when you're used to watching like Vikingo and Omega, I mean, this is good. I feel like WWE fans who FedBrain people were probably popping out of their seat for this, but to me, it was like, oh, some good spots in there. It didn't blow me away though.
No, I agree with that. I definitely feel that there's something awkward about Ricochet and Logan working together for some reason. I definitely think the program with Seth was a little bit more Logan's style, and maybe it just speaks to they didn't have to do as many high spots. Maybe it was a
much
little bit
better
more grounded.
Storytelling with the Rollins match and with the Roman match with Logan.
Yeah, selling the punch and like the one shot is all it takes, and he almost got Roman with the 2 count. Yeah, I thought it was better there, but it's good to have him on the card, and like we said, getting a win because it feels like Logan Paul every time he's in a match he's going to lose, and
yeah.
Not that wins and losses mean everything, but we know that he needs to win eventually to make his next feud feel like it means anything.
Right.
But we had the IC title, which to me was the match of the night as far as work rate goes. Gunther defeated Drew McIntyre. He's on the precipice of breaking Honky Tonk Man's record for the longest reigning IC champion of all time. This match to me was awesome. Great stiff style. These two work really well together. I didn't expect anything different. WrestleMania with the triple threat with Sheamus. These two have great chemistry. We saw a little bit of the hint that maybe Drew will have a heel turn following this, a little bit of frustration from Mr. McIntyre. But your thoughts on this match? I mean, I was blown away. Again, the presentation of Gunther, the IC championship being on this stage, reminiscent of 1992 main eventing at Wembley. The IC title is back at the level, if not to a level we haven't seen it in a very long time, because Gunther's brought it there. It doesn't feel like a mid-card title anymore.
I agree. He's elevated that title back to where it should be. Thought the match was hard hitting, awesome. My match of the night, probably Drew hinting at the frustration. I like that. Gunther, just his entire presentation, he makes everything feel so legit. Not only his moves in the ring, but the character, the music, the package, everything about him works for me. He's in my top 3 people in WWE right now. I love Gunther. Anytime he's in the ring, it just adds a level of prestige to the match. Like, it feels legit. It doesn't feel gimmicked out, or it's just all about the ring general doing his thing. And I loved it. I thought it was great. They chopped the shit out of each other. Yeah. I didn't see Drew winning this. I know some people thought he was going to come in and take this. I see Gunther running away with this honky tonk record. I really do.
Yeah, if you think anybody cares in WWE about Honky Tonk's record, you're just not thinking about it right, because they want to modernize the records, as you had said before so beautifully last week. They want to make sure that their guys own the records. And honestly, a generation ago, maybe anyone cared about Honky Tonk Man, but at the time, even when growing up in the Attitude Era, he was a guy that no one really reacted to, in my opinion. I just don't see him as the draw that he was, and you got to get rid of that record, especially this close. You're right there to do it. It's not like you're 500 days away from it. It's right there within reach, and you might as well give it to Gunther. It's interesting because at the same time, Roman has this really long reign going, and Bianca had lost the title, obviously, to Asuka. Her reign was historic as well. So I know you're doing this all at the same time, but I think it's intentional, and I really think they're trying to get their championship belts to be lined up to look back at the lineage and show he is the greatest IC champion of all time. And it's hard to dispute it, really. Like, kayfabe or not, the dude is bringing the title back up to a level where even go to the Attitude Era, it never had this prestige, even when we were growing up. I don't believe it. I mean, maybe early 92, something like that, when you can reference Bret Hart taking on British Bulldog in the big spot like that. But even then, this title feels enormous right now.
Yeah, and I think that is by design with Gunther's character. That's what makes a great character. If you look at the way Triple H has handled this guy since they hired him to NXT UK and he came in and took the title off of Pete Dunne.
Yep.
He's always been, his character is that dominant force. I don't think this is a guy who could survive a 50-50 booking style. Gunther is built off of dominance. That's been his character on the indies. That's been his character when he came to NXT UK. And now we're seeing Triple H adopt that same booking style with him on the main roster. So for him to take an L, I mean, he's on a big run. So anytime he loses now, he's earned that loss because he's been dominant for so long. But I just don't see this as a guy who's going to just win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And honestly, he could be the guy to take the title off of Seth Rollins at a certain point. I honestly don't see him challenging for a world title and losing. I think the first time we see him challenge for a world title, I think he's going to win it. Every time he's went after a title, for the most part, he's won it. So I think that's his character. So it's to be expected to see these reigns of dominance from Gunther.
Yeah, I don't know what the comparisons are, but I saw a number on social media last night as I'm scrolling after SummerSlam, and 76% of the time he has been a champion, whether it be NXT or WWE or otherwise. And that's a presentation that nobody has gotten. I mean, there's been guys that have been on this roster, main event level guys, and I understand championships are not everything, but they obviously see something in him, and the guy has gotten himself in tremendous shape to the point where like he fit the aesthetic of what WWE views as a main event guy. Of course, he's always been a top guy, whether it be in Progress or any of the independents he was working in for the longest time. But we're watching him take himself to a new level aesthetically and also physically in the ring. The dude is next level. It's plug and play, ready for the main event whenever you're ready to do it. Dude is charged up and ready. Fuel him up, following back up for Backlash against Cody Rhodes when he wins the title. That is a 6 to 7 month program where eventually, to me, Gunther should take the title and have Cody chase him. But that's fantasy booking. Gunther should be your world champion and carry it all across Europe. This is a dude that could be a big bad. You have a tremendous heel on your hands if you push the right buttons, and we've seen them be able to do that lately. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and his aura does not have the aura that he currently has without a strap around his waist.
True,
he just doesn't. Like some guys don't need that. To like Taker. You know, a Taker, a Bray Wyatt, a Kane, when they were at the heights of what they were doing, they never needed gold around their waist. It wasn't about that. Their dominance was formed in other ways. Their auras were created in other ways. But I feel like Gunther has been booked as a champion. So for him to come out and stand there with his guys at his side with the infinite white behind him, Imperium, the columns, you got to have that gold around his waist to make him feel legit, especially the Austrian. I feel like for Americans to really buy in, it's been a genius booking move to make him just this dominant guy, because traditionally I don't think he's the type of person that casual American fans would rally behind, but he's gotten so good and they've built him so well that he feels like a legit top guy to me.
Oh, absolutely. And we speak about top women here. Triple threat match for the WWE Women's Championship. Bianca Belair defeated Charlotte Flair and Asuka. And what was an okay match to me? They played the angle up where Bianca got hurt. She stole the win. With the finish was created with Asuka in the figure eight and then rolled up Asuka. So it was a nice combination. Actually, Bianca was in the figure eight herself as she's struggling with the hurt knee, was able to roll up Asuka while this was going on, and Charlotte couldn't get her legs out. So the finish was there. Bianca is now the champion. She's kind of struggling to get to her feet. And of course, Io Sky comes out with Bayley. Everybody knows the drill here. She cashes in. Io Sky is now your WWE Women's Champion. What are your thoughts on this? Io Sky, first of all, I'd like to see Io Sky here. To think about just optically from SummerSlam to SummerSlam, if you look at that as a year, this was Triple H's like stamp on SummerSlam 2022 was damage control and bringing some of the NXT faces back. And here we are a year later, she's standing with the biggest championship in all of WWE for women. I think this is awesome and great to see. And Io Sky is someone that has grown tremendously under the damage control umbrella. And I'm interested to see where this reign goes. So awesome sign for the women's division that Io got the rub here.
No, I love seeing her win. It's interesting. It's different. I do think it's a cool path that they brought him back last year, and now a year later she's winning gold. I think that's cool. I still think they've kind of done a disservice to all of these women. I wasn't really attached to this story. I think right now in wrestling, women's wrestling from a story perspective is just not being handled the way I would like it to be. I think it's not, I'm not seeing as in-depth storytelling as they do for the men. Where's our bloodline story for the women? Where's our, outside of Rhea, like, I don't know. It was a decent match. The Io Sky cash-in made it. I think it needed it. Like, when you really step back from this match and see the three women involved and see the way they built this match, it's kind of predictable that Io would cash in, because that's all you really had to do to make this match kind of elevate itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see where these three women go. And outside of Io, who's chasing Io? I think Bianca is probably going to go on the shelf for a bit. I mean, even kayfabe wise. And who's chasing Io? Are they going to figure out a way to tie in damage control? I'm curious where they go with it. But
yeah, and they just kind of threw, they were hinting at this Bailey Io, like there was friction there, and I guess they just kind of went away from that. Or maybe they come back to that. Who knows?
Potentially. But we also had the World Heavyweight Championship. This was revisiting a SummerSlam of days gone by. Seth Rollins defeated Finn Balor. And this was a really good match. I thought this was like really good, especially tying in the history. We had, first of all, to set the tone, Seth came out wearing the attire, the entrance vest from that match in Barclays Center for the first ever Universal Championship, where Finn Balor got hurt in the match with the buckle bomb that happened on the barricade outside. Really good reference. I mean, Finn Balor felt like a main eventer here. I loved it. I thought, again, the storyline, as we referenced before with the Bloodline, they're really introducing a lot of the long form storytelling in this Judgment Day thing, where they're really focused on the facial expression. If you notice this, Finn Balor's face and Damian Priest's face and just everyone's reaction to everything happening in real time. Thought that was very obvious here. But the story is, I mean, you can go many ways. Talk about it last week. It could have been Finn winning the title and Damian cashing in on him, or teasing doing that. Or you could have had Seth Rollins winning the match and then him cashing in and winning, and Finn Balor's watching Damian Priest have the championship. But they went the route where, unfortunately for Judgment Day, Damian Priest cost Finn Balor the match by sliding in the briefcase, distracting the ref, thinking that Finn Balor's going to use it. But unfortunately, Seth was able to get the curb stomp onto the briefcase as Finn was trying to grab it. I thought it was interesting how they told that story. It was executed pretty well here. And Seth walking away with the title. I thought it was a good time to get the title off of him, especially with all the things you've been building up with Finn, pulling the trigger with that. But I just hope they don't break up Judgment Day. I know that they're planting the seeds for that. The dissension is there. But this storyline has way more to give than just breaking them up and having them go the separate ways. Because if Finn goes a separate way, where are you left with? If everyone is feeding off this Judgment Day plan, and if you decide to have Finn go by himself and Damian, they're just guys on the roster. Having the Judgment Day umbrella tying them together, I think it's a missed opportunity if you break them up too soon.
Yeah, I mean, the match itself was solid. It was good. The finish was what it was. I thought they should have put the belt on Finn, man. Like, I feel like you've got a lot more story, and I get they're trying to really legitimize this participation trophy by having Seth hold it and defend it a lot. And I respect that, but it worries me that they're really teasing this breakup, and I just don't see that being the move. I really don't. I mean, I guess you could just kick Damian out, turn him babyface, and keep the other three together, but
he's just a guy after you do that. To me, he's just
100%. He's just a guy. I think being under the umbrella of Judgment Day, like you said, makes everyone feel elevated and more special. And in WWE, when you're just a guy, that's a death sentence to the mid card. There's a lot of big guys that could be main event people on that roster right now that are just kind of toiling away in the mid card. And I don't see Damian Priest being a main event level guy outside of this faction. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we'll certainly see more of that tonight on Raw. So if you guys are watching this, also watching Raw at the same time, maybe we get a cash in tonight. We'll see what happens. But we also had the second match of the night was a big one. Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar took on each other for the third time, the rubber match here. And this was a copy and paste Brock Lesnar match, the formula where he dominates and he's making it feel like the underdog is not going to be able to get out from underneath him. And they found a formula Brock Lesnar going back to the year where he squashed John Cena, and then also the match with Daniel Bryan, or aka Bryan Danielson, at Survivor Series. They do this where they rally the crowd up to a point where they want to see Cody Rhodes be able to do this. And they even did it at the Rumble too, where Drew McIntyre finally hit the Claymore and then eliminated him. They build it up, the tension. I thought this is such a great job here. And as an example, first of all, how over Cody Rhodes was and how masterful Brock Lesnar is telling stories in so many different ways in the ring. And the main thing here, Cody gets the win. We knew that was going to happen. He needs to look strong going into the fall, then eventually into the spring for WrestleMania. The story was afterwards, and everyone thought this was like, okay, they wrote this. Triple H, they probably wanted Lesnar to shake his hand. But according to everybody involved, this was in the press conference when asked about the moment after where Cody Rhodes and Lesnar shook hands, and even to the point where Lesnar turned him around to the audience, lifting his arm up and kind of anointing him as the next guy. Apparently Triple H said that was unscripted. For Lesnar to do that out of his way, insane to me. Now that it's a different perspective that was all done on the fly from a guy like Lesnar who really doesn't have to do that.
Not only does he not have to do that, but he's a guy who doesn't do that. So for him to do that is shocking. Like that, Lesnar doing that is the equivalent of Taker giving you the nod back in the day. I feel like Lesnar really passed the torch there in a lot of ways, as far as to get that amount of respect from a guy who does not show any respect. Monumental to me. This was right there with Gunther and Drew McIntyre. This was one of my favorite matches of the night. I just loved it. It's classic Brock Lesnar storytelling. Just pull for the underdog. He pulls it out. He hits all of his moves. Cody cutter, boom, hits it, gets the win. I thought it was a nice notch on Cody's belt on the way to getting this Roman title. I thought it was. We will look back at this as a monumental step for Cody. This entire little 3-match feud he's had with Lesnar, I think, has been a lot of fun. It leaves me wondering what's next for Cody. If Mania 40 is the destination, how are we going to occupy Cody on the way to that destination?
So Cody sat in the press conference after talking about the match, and he had said that they're bonded by battle. He also said that Lesnar is a unicorn, saying that he is a once-in-a-lifetime individual. But the most interesting thing I pulled away from this, because I love the historical reference and tying it all together, he said that Brock Lesnar reminded him of how his dad looked at Harley Race, and he feels like he may have found his Harley Race in Brock Lesnar to really take him to the next level. And that's high praise for everybody involved. Not that Lesnar needs that pat on the back, but who would have thought this one-off feud that we just got, fuck, man, this is the roadblock they put in his way after WrestleMania, and everybody wanted Cody so badly to walk away with that title following WrestleMania in LA, and then we're like, oh, here it is, the classic Lesnar feud. Man, this was like this pairing that kind of really helped everybody involved. And I think also Lesnar continues to show a different side of himself where, I don't know, I think Lesnar even walked out a little bit better out of this feud, where everyone thinks about how could this help Cody, but I also feel like Brock Lesnar is looked at in a different light following this feud. And who would have thought you would have said that 3 matches ago?
Oh, I know. For me, this feud is instrumental in making Cody look tough, look badass, look like he has grit. I mean, the broken arm. This whole angle was about beating this dude to a pulp and him still having the grit and determination to get through it and win. And it achieved that in spades. I thought it was brilliantly booked from the beginning to the end. And the cherry on top is Lesnar goes into business for himself, lifting the hand off script, coronating the next guy. Brilliant stuff.
It didn't even feel contrived. And I know they've used this sort of script with different guys in the past. And I think about guys like the Big Show and Kane during the Ruthless Aggression era and a little bit after that, where if you were the guy, they'd want you to beat a guy like Big Show, beat a giant, look so the fans look at you in a certain way. And to me, it never had that effect. Brock Lesnar is different. I think Cody Rhodes used the word unicorn. I don't think there's a better word for him. He is a guy we're going to look at really well as far as in the future goes. But in the immediate, we need to appreciate what Brock Lesnar continues to give back to the business, because to me, he's approaching Mount Rushmore status. I understand everyone gets caught in their feels about he doesn't have the same passion for pro wrestling. He's not a fan of pro wrestling. He doesn't even watch wrestling. But what he's done for the business, he's left a legacy behind, and he continues to leave a legacy of making things better. And they continue, as we referenced on the show weeks ago about this streak with Taker. He was the right guy to break the streak because he continues to divvy out the payouts of all to everybody involved. Here's some of this, here's some of that, building new stars, whether it be Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes. We have these new stars that have been born out of that. And it's not just dead energy. It's kinetic energy that continues to drive up the card. And who knows who else is going to benefit from it. That's the beautiful part.
Oh yeah. I mean, Lesnar fans are going to miss him when he's gone, man. I think he's a once in a lifetime guy. Cody called him a unicorn. He truly is. From a specimen level, I think his selling and just his storytelling in ring, everything that he does, like you said, he doesn't watch wrestling. He's not a fan. Dude, he knows the business though.
Oh yeah.
He knows the business. And I think he continues to show that in what essentially is probably the twilight of his career. You know, that's what you have to really, it's like when you're watching a Tom Brady or a Kobe Bryant late in their career, you have to really appreciate him right now while we have him, because he's mid-40s, a guy that big, he will start winding down. We saw Cena do that. And before you know it, he'll be a special attraction guy that shows up at Mania once a year. And then before you know it, he won't even be doing that. So appreciate him while you have him.
Yeah, he'll disappear into the woods of Canada somewhere, and you'll never see him. He's going to pop out with a beard maybe every once in a while. I don't think he's doing shoot interviews. He's not going to have a podcast with Conrad. Enjoy him while he's here, guys.
Right.
So in our main event here, we had a tribal combat match for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship and also the title of Tribal Chief. Roman Reigns defeated Jey Uso. Story was the one everyone's talking about. And I'll let you take the floor here. Chad, how are you feeling about Jimmy Uso turning on his brother to keep the title on Roman Reigns and continue this bloodline storyline in a direction that I think everyone kind of figured it might go this way, but how do we make sense of Jimmy turning on his brother after all we've been through?
I mean, this is just like, I saw this. I'm like, hold on. Didn't he set this whole thing in motion? Didn't Jimmy set this whole situation up when he kicked Roman? And now he's turning on his brother. It seemed like, I don't want to say lazy booking, because obviously this story has been booked brilliantly. We've said it on this show. It's one of the best stories they've ever told in WWE, a top 3 story all time. I get all of that. But I scratched my head when this happened. Like, usually you have a shred of something where you're like, okay, I can kind of see why he did that. And sometimes it's good to have a question mark, like where did that come from? But you're getting into dangerous territory when you're flipping guys so much. I feel like this storyline is so insular. Like, there's so many. Sami Zayn's out of the storyline. So essentially right now we have the Usos, Roman, and Solo going around in circles. And they're not bringing anyone into this storyline outside of them. So it's like they needed that. Like, if this was Jacob Fatu costing it, joining with Roman, then I'm like, okay, but it just doesn't make sense. You've set the precedent. Anytime you flip a guy like this, I check out a little bit. I think a lot of great performers have had their entire careers ruined from flip-flopping so much, where the more you flip a guy back and forth, the less I care, because I'm like, well, who are you? And if they come on SmackDown and give me something to sink my teeth into, and I'm like, yes, I did think we talked about, I think last week when we were previewing it, I said Jimmy and Jay versus each other. It's their dream match. It's something to build towards Mania 40. But there were other ways to get to that than right now. It just seems, I don't know. It felt like they needed an out and they just used this instead of coming up with something more creative. Jimmy already made his decision and now he's flipping his decision again. I don't know. I wasn't a fan of it. And I thought the match was entirely too long. Let's be honest. That crowd, when the last 5 minutes of that match was happening, the crowd was lit. They were on their feet. Beginning of this match was not that hyped. What I was watching, the crowd did not seem that hyped for it. It was like, 30 minutes long? It was 25 minutes before Solo even came out.
Right.
And the match didn't seem like it dictated a long match like that. I don't know. I wasn't big on this. I thought this was a misstep in a storyline that has had very, very few missteps.
And I think Friday will give us a lot of answers as to what they said. And the only way this works for me, the only way is if Jimmy Uso is still not siding with Roman Reigns, and now Jey Uso is just at odds where maybe Jimmy thought about it. He thinks about his brother being the tribal chief. Maybe that is the reasoning, but he cannot side back with Roman. I think this has to be the three of them at odds with each other, and eventually Solo at odds with them as well. And I think we're moving towards a bloodline fatal four-way down the line, probably at Survivor Series, where it's going to be everybody gunning for Roman's title.
Here's my question, though, to you, Ace, with that.
Sure.
What beef does he have with Jay? Like, am I missing something?
I would say his beef is that he doesn't want him being champion. I don't think his beef is mostly with him as a person. It's him as wanting to be tribal chief, because maybe again, this is all reasoning on Friday. If they sit there and say, you're trying to become Roman Reigns, which we try to defeat from underneath, and now you're becoming him. That could be what they go with. But even that, it's fragile. I feel like that's
it's a cop out.
It's pretty weak. It could be weak, but I think at the very least, I think WWE Creative has been given enough reins now that we can at least say, give them the benefit of the doubt to see if they can work their way out of this. Because even when you go back to when Cody lost, and then also when Sammy lost, when they told those things, and there was reactionary podcasts like ours, and we all said, I didn't like the way they did that, people kind of continued to tune in and thought they made the right choice. It remains to be seen if this is the right choice. But I think, like, you're right. If this was Jacob Fatu doing the same exact way, having him cost the match, we could be in for another 4 or 5 months of the programming. And we're still having even Paul Heyman references in the presser following SummerSlam that they're just getting started. So what else is going to happen if you don't infuse more talent into this? As you said, it's like incestuous. It's all these guys working together. It needs to eventually be other people, a part of the Samoan family, to be back in the mix. It's Jacob Fatu. How do you introduce the elders? Who else is out there that you could put in? Because eventually the same trope over and over again of he turns on him, he turns on him, he turns on him. It gets old.
It gets old. This is the first time where, and I get, like, they have earned the right to have us wait and see. But at the same time, like, I would be lying if I said this wasn't the first time this was the first time I really felt the damn. They've kind of been doing this like a lot. Like, they've kind of been doing different variations of
that finish we just saw, but it's Solo usually. Yes.
Solo doing it. Jay turns, Jimmy turns, Jimmy turns back again. It's like, okay, you got to give me something new. Like, it's starting. I'm going to catch so much shit for this, but this storyline, I know it's one thing. One thing went wrong. One thing went wrong, and I'm bitching about it. Sue me, but it's starting to feel stale. It
I thought
is.
you were going to say it's becoming the NWO. I thought you were going to say that.
In a way it is. The only difference is the NWO was at least pumping people in. They were just pumping too many people in. This storyline, they're not pumping anyone in, and they're just going in circles with the same guys. And I'm like, and I like the inner turmoil and all of that. I think that's cool. I just think when you're to a point where you're flipping and turning the same people back and forth, and like you said, maybe he's not joining Roman again. Maybe he's on his own, but he turned on his brother again. He turned on Roman. Now he turned on his brother. I don't know. It's just becoming stale. It's becoming like they need an X factor. They don't have an X factor anymore.
Werewolf, bring him in.
Samoan werewolf. That's who they need.
Yeah, so that's SummerSlam right here, and I thought it was a fun event all told. And the PLEs are great for WWE. Let's be honest; it's a good time to watch them. Their weekly TV leaves a lot to be desired on Mondays. Friday's better than Monday, but if you're watching WWE, most of the stories are told. You can watch the Bloodline stuff on YouTube, watch the PLE stuff on Peacock, and that's really the main energy that goes into everything. So I walk away being more impressed than not with the event. I would probably give it a strong 7 out of 10 as far as entertainment value goes. There were some missteps. Of course, the Shayna match with Ronda probably take off the card. The Battle Royal is unnecessary as well, but as far as the main storytelling, I thought they did a good job of exercising exactly what they were trying to do, what they're trying to do, especially maybe we don't agree with what they're trying to tell, but they advanced a lot of story here. I mean, across all different domains. I mean, whether it be the World Heavyweight title or Cody and Brock, or they advanced things past the point. At least you can give them that.
Yeah, it was a good, solid, straight up SummerSlam type of event. I thought they were missing that one thing, that one holy shit moment that sends the wrestling community on fire for the week after. Feel like we didn't really have that. Maybe the Uso turn was that for some people, but it was missing that big moment for me, but it was a solid pay-per-view.
So before we move on from it, if Jay would have won, I think the crowd in Detroit would have reacted immensely and would have been so into it. But I think the reaction after the fact, I think we'd be sitting on the podcast here today saying it was the biggest misstep in the history of missteps, in my opinion. Because if Jay walked away at the time, I'm watching this match, he just didn't feel like he should be that guy. And I know that's probably hard on Jay. He's just not the guy.
He's not that guy. You're not that guy, pal. I mean, he's really not. And me being down on Jimmy turning on Jay has nothing to do with me thinking Roman should have lost. Roman should have won. I just didn't like the turn. And when is Roman going? If he's such a bad dude, when's he going to win one by himself?
Yeah. Where was that chart? I think, was it Nick from Extra Cooler? Did he, someone released the chart in our Pod Foundation Instagram chat that had all the finishes, all the variations, and all the dirty wins that Roman's had. He hasn't won clean in years at this point. Every match he has some level of, chicanery going on in this match. And, more of the same.
That's part of being a heel. I get it. But if you're saying you're in God mode and you're this bad dude, you haven't been a bad dude by yourself for a while, bud. When are we going to see that? I thought he was just going to beat Jay straight up. But when Jimmy got involved, I'm like, really? More of this shit?
I mean, if he would have squashed him like the Cena thing, can you imagine? That would have been actually epic.
I would have loved that.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. That being said, let's get to story number 2 with some big stuff going on in All Elite Wrestling.
Big story 2.
All right, big story number 2. We have some re-signings happening in the world of AEW, and we just covered this story. We'll start with the main one. The Elite are going to remain elite for the time being. Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, and Hangman Adam Page have all signed extensions. This was reported by SI. Big deal. Sports Illustrated.
Huge deal.
We got a lot of quotes, and we'll get into them, all that stuff, into what our reaction is, and about the re-signings of the other guys, the Dark Order, and also Kip Sabian, all those guys. But your reaction as a fan, now that this veil has been lifted, this dark cloud over AEW, feeling that the Elite could leave, your feelings right now?
I mean, they had to do it, anytime someone's contract's up, I feel like you've got I don't know, man, they could leave for WWE. They really could. this wasn't just big for the fan base of, hey, we get to have our guys still in AEW. This was big for Tony Khan to prove that I can sign my core guys. Because if these guys would have left with Cody leaving, it would have been a big blow. I mean, they would have continued, but just the optics of it would have been a bad look. And I think it's big for the company, man. You got to have these guys. They were kind of I want to say Nick Jackson was the first person to really be in contact with Tony before Cody, before I think it was Nick, right? That
I would say it was Nick, yeah, that had the initial conversation with Tony when he had interest in starting something up.
So it all started with the Bucks, and then they brought Cody and the other guys in. So I think it's huge, and I think it's huge that they re-signed Dark Order. Kip is, God bless the guy. They're sticking with him. They're trying to work. He's a young project for Tony, so it's kind of one of those things of like, he's been here from the jump. These are all guys that were there from the beginning. Not so much John Silver and Alex Reynolds, but that faction has played a big part in AEW history, Dark Order. So I think having all these guys sign, especially Dark Order and the Elite, it's signings like this are very integral to a company, especially a young company that is trying to establish its own history. We always talk about WWE has something that no other company can ever have, and that's this epic history that they have. And if AEW is trying to build out their own history, you have to have your own talent that is original to you, not just signings from other companies. And the fact that we can watch these characters go where they're going to go and do what they're going to do for the foreseeable future, I think it's huge for the company.
And just in response to all those trolls that live in the Turnbuckle Tavern, comments on Instagram, follow at Turnbuckle Tavern. By every news outlet, everybody that was talking about it, WWE had significant interest in signing Omega and the Young Bucks. So those people, those exact people that are commenting on the report where we put the Instagram thing on our Turnbuckle Tavern page saying, oh, well, where were they going to go? No one was interested. You'd have the exact same people saying, look, we stole your top guys. I can't wait to see them in WWE. So fuck those guys. I mean, it's so annoying reading that stuff, but
super annoying.
These tribalistic type of fans that just like, I can't stand it, where people just, there's one guy who comments on our page. I'm not even going to give his name out there. Just says AEW sucks. Like, dude, get a life. I mean, just unfollow at this
point. You're fed brain. You're dude, we watch it all, man. I like things from everything. The fact that you just blanket statement on one company, you're an idiot.
Agreed. So we had some other stuff. I mean, Nick Jackson was very complimentary, and he said the schedule played a huge part of it. Talked about his wife and 3 children and talking about how that was a huge factor. And at this point of his life and career, he said, I didn't want to be on the road half the time. And that was a big piece. And Tony Khan was talking about the importance of the Elite altogether, saying the Elite have been so important to the launch of AEW, with the Young Bucks going all in when I first approached them in 2018 about my dream to create an international pro wrestling promotion. Then he talked about the history with Kenny Omega and talked about celebrating 200th episode of AEW Dynamite, how pivotal they've been. And, also we referenced before, Cody Rhodes talked about this as well in that interview, talking about how happy he was for them, not just for them as people, but also for the pro wrestling business, where 2 promotions that are rivals. You got to think about it this way. I mean, you're creating an environment where wrestlers are getting better contract negotiations and creating an environment where they're getting more leverage in their camp about whether it be healthcare or more lucrative deals. Wrestling's in a better place at AEW's out there, and it drove the price up because obviously WWE wanted them on their side, whether it be for nefarious reasons that they just want to take them away, but it also drove the price up where AEW had to create and offer amount of money that they wanted to keep them. And that is a big piece. And with WWE and AEW and wrestling at large, we never actually see the amount of money. Sometimes it leaks out. I wish we'd have like the side scroll they have on ESPN where with baseball, it says like this person signed a 5-year, $200 million deal. I would love to see that because the conversation would be a lot different.
I heard someone say they're the highest paid tag team in wrestling now, whatever that means. And I've heard, I think I heard Cody say that Nick and Matt are now making NBA money.
Sweet.
So Take that for what you want.
So, I mean, all the other conversation be damned. I mean, the big thing that we're walking away from this is, Meltzer also talked about the unresolved backstage issue. That really kind of was the driving point of people thinking the Elite could leave. Of course, the Cody thing set precedent, but I think the unresolved stuff with Punk made people thinking like, hey, maybe they just want to escape, hit that launch button out of the spaceship and just launch into the sky out of the company. But Meltzer said, even with the signing, there does remain significant behind the scenes issues that haven't been settled between them and CM Punk, which keeps Khan having to do a balancing act. It seems like we're moving in the right direction with that, and we'll talk about that in the quick hitters, but we're going to get FTR and the Young Bucks working together. It feels like they're referencing, because the other thing too, to put our conspiracy theory hat on, going back to the quote from the beginning, where Kenny Omega said, Matt Jackson said, we're literally the E in AEW. Go back to when CM Punk put the X through it, right through the E. I mean, come on. How do you not put the pieces together? If you're a fan, if you're someone rooting for good stories in pro wrestling, it's right there on a platter. Let's do it.
I think it's coming, man. I think we're going to get it. I think these guys are all playing it close to the vest, and I think a lot of these dirt sheet writers don't even know what's being planned. I really think it's coming. I've been very doubtful, but I don't know, man. There's just something telling me we're going to get it. I think they know they have to. They haven't had that story that truly puts them at the top of the card like the Elite should be, in the eyes of the fans. I think that story could be that if they do it right.
So we also talked about inflation and talking about that, how it affects SummerSlam. And you also said they're the highest paid tag team in wrestling, but according to their agent, Matt Bloom, apparently AEW gave them the highest guaranteed money for any tag team in the wrestling history, which includes World Championship Wrestling, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And I understand inflation, 1995, 1996 is different than 2023. But wrestling's in a good spot where everybody's eating. I know that's like cliche at this point, but we're watching the Young Bucks be able to have life-changing money where their children will not have to worry about money, and their children may not have to worry about money because of what they're putting into, pro wrestling. To think about this thing they start to do in bingo halls, for lack of a better term, is being able to put food on their table and then some.
Yeah, and
it's amazing.
They're all keeping their EVP titles too. So they're keeping that responsibility from what I've read. And regardless of what you think, what company you prefer, having a company out there that can pay money like this outside of Stamford, Connecticut is nothing but good for the pro wrestlers. Like if you like the wrestlers in WWE and you want to see them get paid well, having a company that can pay them just as well as WWE is better because it drives the price up and all of the wrestlers get rich for it. And I would rather see those wrestlers who put their bodies on the line get the benefits of that extra money instead of these TV deals just going back into the coffers of the suits.
Yeah, as we see with wrestling, like the more, and especially like with football and basketball, these monies that pay a lot of money. I mean, these leagues that pay a lot of money for these talents to put their efforts into like honing their craft. As long as pro wrestling continues to be money that someone can live off of, we're going to continue to get the best athletes in whatever platform as they grow up to pursue professional wrestling. If it was not financially driven, if it was not something that they could live off of, a lot of people, the best athletes would go play different sports. They would go and do different things. But here we are, pro wrestling. The better it is for the future of wrestling is you're going to get young kids that look into this as a viable option to make a living. And it's not just this backyard thing where you're going to get like people out there. You're getting people that probably could play professional football, could play professional basketball. They're coming out here and they're going to do professional wrestling and start it and treat it like a career. And that's, people don't think about that as you're planting seeds under a tree you're never going to sit under. But this is that type of mindset where this has legs, man. You have a 3-year-old right now that is going to go through high school, maybe as a fan, but they didn't want to pursue wrestling. I think as a kid, wrestling was not something that was achievable. I mean, they just started to kind of build schools and make them a little bit more like attainable with social media and accessible, but it was kind of a word of mouth thing. And now it's just so commonplace where you're going to get, a lot of kids coming into wrestling where it's something they can make money off of in the future.
100%, man. That's a great point. When you have stuff like when you have a healthy bidding environment and people are making money, you're going to reap the benefits of those athletes, like guys that would go into football, like you said, maybe they're a wrestling fan, and now that it's a viable option, if I put my heart and soul into what I would in a collegiate sport, I could make big money, be on TV, be a star. I love this. Is great for the future of the next generation of pro wrestling, and for fans of AEW. This is great. If you're a diehard fan of AEW or you just like the product, this is a great sign, because this is a sign that Tony, when he's putting money back into not only the elite, but when he's signing guys like Dark Order, when he's signing guys like Kip Sabian, 3-4-year deals, the business is healthy and All Elite Wrestling is going to be around a while. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be signing these deals. You know, anything can happen, but I think it's just a sign of the health of the company itself and that it's here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future.
Living and breathing as we continue, but let's get to big story number 3 here.
Big Story 3.
So we have some drama in the AEW locker room on the women's side of things, and this is nothing new for us to talk about. On July 27th, LUFISTO sent out a tweet referencing a lot of the stuff we saw on Dynamite. We put it on the graphic for the flagship show, Book the Women's Division Better. And she said it's queued up. People blame booking for a bad women's division, talent with too much power, talent denigrating each other, talent trash talking potential employees should never get in as soon as they walk in. It starts here. She calls herself the one you called a fucking French Canadian asshole. All right. So this kind of was a pipe bomb put into the system here. And this all took place on Twitter, aka X, all over the place. We had the women responded. You had AEW talent responding. Dustin Rhodes was probably the most appropriate response to this. The comments that a lot of people have been seeing about this, and there's a low-hanging fruit for this women's division. It's been controversy, whether it be founded or unfounded, with Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker creating an environment that's unhealthy and political, or whatever they want to say it is. But the AEW talent that responded in droves in response to how wrong she really was about how she just didn't impress people to be there made it quite clear that there is drama there, but this was unfounded. And she eventually deactivated her Twitter account. And, I think maybe it was therapeutic for the women's division to rally together against someone who kind of put them on blast for something they didn't do.
Yeah. And LUFISTO, very heralded independent wrestler, and for her to come out, she drops this pipe bomb tweet. And then I believe she goes and does a long form interview with Fightful.
It was pages long.
Long, where she breaks down her entire day working at AEW. And this was taken, it was a year or so old, right? I mean, it wasn't recent.
The tweet was recent, but she was referencing, I think, the interview she had done. It kind of fell through the cracks, I think, in like the situation with Thunder. People were just talking about how, you remember, like the Thunder Rosa situation kind of took a backseat to the Punk things. No one really was talking about the drama happening in the women's division because it just wasn't as primary as the Punk situation.
Right. And you have an outsider essentially coming in. I think she was doing some dark work.
Yeah.
This is when dark was still going on. And she was there interviewing for a potential producer job too, I believe. She was wanting to talk to Tony. And she essentially, in this big, long interview with Fightful, she threw Ruby Soho under the bus. She threw Britt Baker under the bus. She threw Bunny under the bus. Dustin Rhodes under the bus. A lot of people was in her wake, just firing shots. And MJF had probably the best tweet to me about this, where he went on to pretty much talk about like, hey, if you've been in the business this long and you haven't made it yet, it's probably one of 3 things. I think one of them was talent. One of them was no one likes working with you. And I forget the third one, but when someone posts something like this is a par for the course in our society in anything. Whenever you get a tweet like this, you have all of these voices that rally behind them because, they were done wrong, and they're stepping out and they're speaking their truth, and we're going to support them. We're not going to let them be silenced. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's a great thing. But then when you heard the backlash of everyone kind of rallying to say, hey, you might have had a bad experience, but the way you're portraying this is anything but the truth. And you started to see that she had issues with some of these talents she was throwing under the bus way prior to her visit to AEW. Like, I think her and Ruby had history on the indies. Ruby throws out her comment. She says the women in the AEW locker room don't just claim to be in support of women's wrestling, they show it. Whether you see it or not, the ones who don't ask for credit after they stand in gorilla and cheer for two women who beat each other to a pulp for your amusement, the ones who lend an enhancement talent their knee pads because they forgot theirs at home, the ones who sit in the locker room with a sobbing peer for an hour to console her when she's having a bad day, those women are silent heroes. Just because the voices you hear are the loudest doesn't mean they're... And I found it very odd that she went after Ruby, because I remember vividly when Ruby Soho left WWE, the one thing you heard from the women's locker room in WWE was she was like the rock of that locker room. How everyone loved her. She was like the morale booster. She was a great teacher. She was someone great to lean on. So it took me back when LuFisto went after her, and to hear Ruby's tweet back, I was like, man, you don't know who to believe. And then just a bevy, like you said, Ace, it's like this almost rallied the women's locker room, because and I don't even have them all here. Renee Paquette comes out, Penelope Ford comes out speaking on her personal issue that the locker room kind of rallied around her on. Taya Valkyrie came out. Madison Rain, who is one of the producers in the locker room, she's been wrestling a little bit for them. I mean, there was even Britt came out, Paige came out, a host of MJF, even people outside of the women's division. So it was a very interesting firestorm that kind of lit up, which ended in, like you said, LuFisto deactivating her Twitter and leaving. When you step back and just look at all of this drama, what's your take on it? What's your overall perception of this?
I mean, a lot of times I think there's just accessibility to the information. This has always been the wrestling business. I think that people that come in, I think if you would have asked someone in 1975 about Nature Boy Ric Flair, maybe they would have said he was nice, but there's also some people that would have said the same thing that LuFisto's saying about the women's division. It's just about perception. And I think having the platform to say those things, I think maybe, because this, at the end of the day, the reaction to this kind of puts LuFisto in a spot where she's never going to get an opportunity. If she didn't get an opportunity before that, now she's never going to get an opportunity, because now she's that person who said those things. Whether her situation was warranted or not, it's from her perspective. And clearly, and like I always think about this cliche thing, and I forget who said it to me. It was one of these one-off things someone said. If you meet an asshole once in a day, maybe they're an asshole. But if you meet all assholes throughout the day, maybe you're the asshole. And I think at this point, like, with everybody coming out and defending each other, this might be what the women's division needed to galvanize them against all the stuff internally about this one person outside coming in and shaking the treehouse and saying, like, you guys, we're standing in defense of what we're building here. And this is maybe the wake up call they needed to be like, hey, this is the perception people have of us, and we have to control that perception now going forward and make people aware of the good stuff, the stuff that Ruby was referencing. I thought it was so well written about the stuff that happens behind the scenes that you don't read a report on. That's not going to pop up in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It's not going to pop up in the latest breaking news, but little things like that go a really long way about helping young talent. And you hear the story all across the board, whether it be WWE or AEW, about guys going out of the way, women go out of their way to help talent as they come through. And I personally know people that have gone with AEW working enhancement, and also same thing with WWE. Nothing but amazing things to say about these experiences there and the people there, and just how giving a lot of the biggest stars in the world are. I mean, you reference MJF, but not that he would want to hear it, but I'm sure, there's been stories out there that have leaked through about what an amazingly nice guy he is and how giving he is with his time and knowledge. So,
yeah,
I mean, we're going to look at this as a blip on the radar. This is going to be one of those situations that, like I said, might be beneficial for the women's division, but for LuFisto, this is going to be her legacy, unfortunately, because of the accessibility of Twitter. Like, unfortunately for us, like, you can't take those things back. You can delete them, deactivate it, but this is going to be what you're known for. And I think right, wrong, or indifferent, you're not going to be welcomed in many locker rooms with that type of attitude.
Yeah, and it's self-sabotage.
For sure.
It's self-sabotage to me. Like, now you're doomed. Now you have this reputation. You thought you were stepping out because of personal experiences. Do people politic? Damn right they politic. That's wrestling, baby. Like, it's an ego-driven sport. Everyone's trying to be the top star. If you aren't politicking a little bit, you're probably never going to climb the ladder. Let's be honest. That's just the way it is. So a lot of the things she was saying, I was just kind of like, yeah, I remember hearing stories about wrestling where to break in, to be the new person in a locker room was absolute hell on earth. And for someone to come out in today's culture and try and throw a pity party on themselves, essentially, like, it just crossed me the wrong way. And I loved seeing it galvanize the locker room. So
yeah, we'll see this story continue here, but again, this might be just the antidote they needed to get the women's division back on track, and hopefully they get to tell more meaningful stories in the ring. So
hopefully,
let's move to quick hitters and talk about all the other news in wrestling. Quick hitters. All right, for the quick hitters, starting here with saying goodbye to the sadist of sequins, Adrian Street. The British wrestling legend passed away this weekend. He is best known for his flamboyant and charismatic in-ring personality, and the WWE also referenced 60 years of his in-ring career. He also designed the wrestling attire worn by Mick Foley, and he also appeared in the film Quest for Fire in 1981. Died at the ripe old age of 82, so lived a long, meaningful life, especially in the wrestling world. 82 is a meaningful, long life, and Adrian Street's legacy will live on.
Yeah, R.I.P. A little before my time, but I grew up knowing the name. I grew up knowing the flamboyant character, the images that would pop up in wrestling magazines as a kid. Yeah, he left a legacy, man. Rest in peace, Adrian Street.
So we also have the news that we're following up on from a few weeks ago. Nick Aldis is close to a deal with WWE. So according to sources, he's in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now ahead of tonight's Raw to kind of have a mini tryout here as a producer. He's not going to be an on-screen talent at all. That was also rumored here, and we talked about it, kind of a shame, and we'll talk about that at length. But they're going to try him out as his producer role, according to PW Insider. He's going to be at a number of the upcoming TV tapings, and we'll see what happens. And to me, it's too much to give in the ring. We saw the short cup of coffee with Impact, his run in NWA, saw him on the Independents, influential in the All In show, the first ever one, in the match against Cody. It just, I understand it's profitable and it's good for not taking any bumps on the bum card, but goddamn, Nick Aldis in the in-ring product it just sucks to see him here. So doing that.
I hope it's a step towards being on-screen talent in WWE. That's what my fingers are crossed that getting his foot in the door would at least maybe he can work his way on screen. I think he's too good on the mic. He's too good in the ring to burn through the last, he's an older guy. He's not super old, but he's in the prime right now. It's time. So I hate it if this just takes him off our TV for good. So I'm hoping this will lead to something with WWE.
Give him the Finley treatment where he was a producer and they brought him back on roll in like 2004, 2005, where all of a sudden he was active in the ring. So maybe that happens and he works his way in it, because I think he has a lot more to give. But yeah. We have an update from the Observer on Vince. Nick Khan declined to comment on the filing on July 17th about federal law enforcement agents executing a search warrant and served a federal grand jury subpoena to Mr. McMahon. There's no charges being brought on the investigations, but looking at it through a lens of just like PR, being served a warrant and a federal grand jury subpoena it's amazing to me that we've moved on. We're in episode 32 of Wrestling Tonight. This would have been a big story, 6-7 months ago, but it's just like water off a duck's back at this point. Like, oh my God, like doesn't even make the top stories here. And it's just another thing that's on Vince's radar. Like, goddamn.
Yeah. And I heard of Fightful had a live stream where they were kind of waxing poetic that this federal grand jury subpoena could be involved with something that has nothing to do with the Wall Street Journal inquiries about McMahon, that this could be tied into former President Trump.
Wow.
And those situations and McMahon's dealings with that.
Jeez.
So take that
That's
as you want.
WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump to you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
We have AEW All In being available on pay-per-view according to WrestleNomics, with potentially DirecTV and In-Demand confirming carriage of All In with respect to their services. So the card will air directly on DirecTV's channel 106, with In-Demand stating the event will be $49.99, which is the usual price of AEW pay-per-views in the US. No word on the package deal with All Out. Didn't hear anything about Bleacher Report, so kind of concerning about the way it's available if you don't have typical cable or DirecTV. Remains to be seen. I think Tony Khan should be kind of answering these questions in the next media appearance he does, whether it be on Busted Open or elsewhere. I want to make sure this is be available for everyone to purchase, even if you're a cord cutter.
Yeah, I'm going to be pissed, man. Hopefully I can order it through Sling. I mean, I don't have DirecTV, so they better find something out.
Yeah, I think maybe they were just saying they're offering on DirecTV, but maybe you got carried away here where people were thinking it's one thing and not the other. Maybe it's going to be included with DirecTV and then normal streaming service will carry it. I'd imagine that would be the case. So according to last night, we have PW Insider reporting that Kairi Sane has signed a new deal with WWE. She came out with a quote: "I've made a decision. I can't say it clearly, but in preparation for a new voyage, a voyage of determination, I would like to put my activities on indefinite hiatus as of the end of September 2023. So apparently she's going to be heading to WWE later this year. Meltzer said on Wrestling Observer Radio that maybe November. She's got 2 more dates in Japan, and then she's coming back to WWE. Kairi Sane adding some depth to the women's division. Best elbow drop in the game, at least in the women's division. Can't wait to see her back. I liked her run throughout Japan and doing the stuff in Freedom, but inevitably the money talks and she's on her way back.
Yeah, I kind of figured she would end up back here. Just when you thought she was out, they pull her back in. I love Kairi. We'll see how they handle her this time.
There's been a lot of conversation about Cody Rhodes, been making a lot of media appearances. You referenced the Sam Roberts interview, which was fantastic. He did the Chris Van Vliet interview, but he did another interview with Forbes, and he was asked about why he left AEW and his favorite thing that AEW has done since he left. And he said, "My favorite thing they've done since I left." That is an interesting question. Taking some time to think about his answer, Rhodes then had a response. He said, "Ricky Starks. I love what Ricky's doing. He surprised me at the Rumble and just showed up backstage. There's grainy security footage that you can still find of Ricky. I love seeing guys like Ricky and MJF doing well in AEW. It's great seeing all the talent I trained with and worked with at the Nightmare Factory growing and really making a name for himself." So we also talked about, the Cody Rhodes documentary that aired, Becoming Cody Rhodes, The American Nightmare, which is a fantastic watch. If you've not watched it, go out of your way right now and check it out after Raw, whatever. It's great to check out. Someone asked him, why did he leave AEW? And he said, "I can't tell you why I left. I can't, and I won't. But I can tell you the reasons that were said that didn't actually matter. I didn't leave AEW because of money, and I didn't leave AEW because of other talents. I left AEW because of a personal issue. That's it." So, Chad, man, that's super cryptic. And I know that people talk about, is it with Tony Khan? Is it with somebody else? Is it just with himself? Like, what do you take from this? Is it something that will ever be known? Like maybe we get a Cody Rhodes book 10, 15 years from now?
I mean, the Cody Rhodes book is going to be very interesting, and it is a very cryptic thing to say, but I think it's also Cody kind of fueling it a little bit. He's a carny man. I think he's fueling it because he did come out and say in this string of interviews, he said, "You'll never hear me say a bad thing about Tony Khan. I love Tony Khan." So I think the personal issue could probably be something as simple as they wanted to turn him into a heel and he didn't want to do that. He didn't see himself as that. I've always thought that's the reason, because if you go back to that last piece of his career there, it was pretty contentious with the fans, man. He was getting booed a lot. And I think there was a directive that they probably wanted a direction they wanted to push him in that he didn't want to get pushed in. He saw himself as what he is right now. And I think that's what the personal issue is. I might be completely wrong. I know nothing, but that's what I lean towards.
So a lot of conversation with AEW has been where their content will live on a streaming service, and AEW head Tony Khan made it clear that he wants it to be in the WBD universe. So he had an interview with Mike Johnson. He said it would be his dream for the entire catalog of AEW and ROH to end up on WBD's Max streaming service. Kind of hyped up Max as being this awesome service, which kind of is a precursor to me that it's actually happening. Because why would you say that and limit your sources if that's where you want it to live? But I mean, also to reference the All In event on Wembley and talked about how that's going to be huge for potentially their catalog of things going on and on the upward swing on everything that they're doing. I just want the content to live somewhere so I can go back and watch some of these old AW Dynamites and the pay-per-views and everything that goes in. I would still pay for the pay-per-views on a monthly basis. I want them to have them somewhere so you can go back and relive it because that's part of the history is being able to relive it.
Yeah, I think that's a major piece to their business model that has yet to be rectified. That streaming platform in today's market, you got to have it. And I do think Max is going to happen. I think when they sign this new deal with him, I think that's going to be a part of it. I really do. I think that's in the works, I believe.
Yeah, with the addition of AEW Collision, I think by all reports, AEW Contact is now contractually exclusive to WBD properties in all of North America. So that means their historical content would be the same thing. So I think it's a matter of time before they are available on Max because it's WBD. They got to find a way to just get it out there and infrastructurally put it together and make sure it all makes sense. Because you look at the Honor Club app, it's still a mess. They've made it better, but it's still a mess.
Right.
We have the 1,000th episode of Impact coming up, and we're going to get some returns, most notably the beautiful people, Velvet Sky and Angelina Love. They're the first names that are going to be announced for the celebration of Impact's history here. We know that Sky and Love are both currently part of NWA, but we're also getting Awesome Kong. She's going to be also appearing with some of these, other appearances, former knockout champion. And the 1,000th episode will be taped in White Plains, New York, Saturday, September 9th, the night after Victory Road in the same venue. So if all things work out, I'd like to be there in person because it's White Plains near Queens, New York. I'm going to try to get there, especially covering Brace for Impact, all that's going on there. Maybe Colt and I are going to meet up and still in the works, but 1,000 episode, big deal. We just celebrated 200 episodes for Dynamite, which is a monumental task, but 1,000 episodes, especially where Impact was back in the day that they made it to this number. It's astounding because people wrote them off as for dead. And now here they are thriving in this bubble that they've created.
Huge. That's very, very huge for them. And, beautiful people forget they were big, man. They're monumental in the women's division. They were over the Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, huge at the time. So I'm stoked to see them return to Impact.
So
awesome
we also
Kong,
have
too.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome Kong come back is amazing. So we have Pac currently out with an undisclosed injury. So kind of unassuming, Tony Schiavone before the Friday AEW Rampage main event announced that Pac is out of action. And he said that Pac will be unable to compete for, quote, quite a while. So we know his last match was July 26th on AEW where he defeated Gravity. He has only wrestled 3 times, Chad, since returning from the injury. He was in the Blood and Guts match, team of BCC and Takeshita. And then also the match I referenced before was the Gravity match. And I don't know, man, this kind of sucks because the match he had with Claudio felt like there was more meat on the bone, potentially if you want to do some ROH stuff. When he's here, it's great. But the fact that he's out with another injury, especially an undisclosed one and out for quite a while, this is kind of deflating.
Yeah, I'm gutted for the dude because guy from the UK is going to miss out on All In. That's, it's killing him. Jamie Hayter's out for a long time too. She's going to miss out on All In. UK girl. Bums me out for those guys, man. And this is breaking. We didn't even have it on our notes, but 2 other big injuries in other companies were announced. Sonya Deville suffered a torn ACL. She's out indefinitely.
Oh my God.
And Jonathan Gresham sustained training injury and he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks.
Damn.
So a lot of people dropping. Sonya Deville, Pac, Gresham, all out with injuries.
Owens is out too. We've got to see what happens with the tag titles right now because he said he's out for an extended period of time. And they just take the titles off of Sammy and KO, so everyone's got to get healthy, get right for the fall and the push towards that next sequence of events here with the fall, maybe the Rumble. Like we need to get healthy now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So our final thing, quick hitters, is a G1 standings update here. So the standings as of today, we have some advancement to the quarterfinals. So we saw the A block get finished up, where we had Sonata and Hikuleo finish up. And Sonata finished a staggering 7-0 with a win over Chase Owens on Saturday. He secured his place in the quarterfinals. And then we saw Hikuleo defeated Shota Umino to secure the second place in A Block in the second quarterfinal spot from A Block. So we had Umino, Hikuleo, Gabe Kidd, Tsuji, and Kiyomiya all mathematically alive heading into Saturday's show. So there was some drama. So now we have Sonata waiting the second place finisher in C Block, while Hikuleo will take on the first place finisher in D Block. So we also had B Block finishing up last night. Okada and Will Ospreay got past there. Okada finished 6-1 with 12 points. Ospreay finished 5-2 with 10 points, which puts us Thursday, August 10th. We're going to have our quarterfinals matchup set. Sonata is going to take on the C Block second place finisher. The B Block winner, Okada, is going to take on the D Block second place finisher. We're going to get the C Block winner taking on the B Block second place winner, Will Ospreay. And then the D Block winner is going to take on the A Block second place finisher, Hikuleo. So, goddamn, we have finally some clarity. All the names out here. So, just so you know, for reference, Sonata, Hikuleo moving on, Okada, Ospreay moving on. And for the C Block right now, David Finlay and Evil right now are kind of in a logjam. Feels like they're the favorite to walk out of C Block. And Jeff Cobb and Zack Sabre Jr. are kind of on the run for the D Block. But, you know, Eddie Kingston's still alive. Tama Tonga's still alive. Naito's still alive. Tanahashi's still alive. So there's a lot to be told with C Block and D Block. We'll get that tonight and figure out who's going to the quarterfinals. But G1's been fun, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot. I really hope Eddie squeaks it in. Him and Finlay out of C Block would be fun. And keep your eyes on Hikuleo. I think WWE is going to come calling for that guy.
Oh, I agree. I think he's great. And I remember, I forget who we had on the debate one time, and she's the New Japan Pro Wrestling podcaster. She was very high in Hikuleo, and especially about towards the finish.
Marie
I think
Shadows.
Exactly. Shout out to Marie Shadows. And, talking about Hikuleo, and she kind of had her finger on the pulse a little bit before he kind of made his run here. And he's had a nice showing in the G1. And that's the best part. Even though you don't make it out of this kind of preliminary tournament style round, it's still fun to see some of these guys come out and show out, because like Kiyomiya, I know he's a guy that we've been talking about a lot on the show, had a nice showing. I know he didn't make it out of A Block, and Sonata was kind of undeniable at this point, finishing 7-0, which I got to look at the history. I'm not sure if anyone's kind of been in the bracket standings going undefeated. Usually they have one loss, but it's kind of even Okada last year walked out of the block standings with a loss. Sonata has been pretty dominant. We'll see what happens with the remainder of this, but it's fun.
Yeah, I think they're trying to make him. They're trying to make him into the next guy. I think he's got a ways to go for me. I think he's got the look. I'm just not fully connected to Sonata yet. I
was saying on Brace for Impact that watching Uemura take on Kenny King and Joe Hendry in that digital media championship, I was like, I looked at him as one of those guys, like, you might be able to build around Uemura. I saw a little bit of piece of that Takeshita style in him. And I don't know. I have a lot to be Sonata in-ring quality, 2G as well. Like, I think he's been amazing. I don't know. New Japan Pro Wrestling's in a rebuilding phase as you watch the aging superstars kind of in their twilight.
Right.
They need an infusion of talent, and we'll see what happens in the future. But this is kind of the old guard taking the reins here, and Sonata is kind of leading the charge as kind of a newer guy. But it's been fun.
Yeah, it has been.
Let's go to Dave's Raves and talk about what he thought was match of the week and performer of the week.
Dave Raves.
All right, Mr. Meltzer here. He had a lot to say about some of the other matches, and this match of the week was surprising to me, but it was a very good match. If you don't watch NXT, you were kind of sleeping on this. His match of the week was Carmelo Hayes versus Dragunov from July 30th, Cedar Park, Texas, for Great American Bash. And he was very, very complimentary of this match, saying the Dragunov and the crowd at the HEB Center in Cedar Park would seem to share MVP honors for a strong NXT Great American Bash show on 7:30. He also complimented Dragunov, saying he was the spark in the main event where he lost to NXT champion Carmelo Hayes, which is one of the WWE's best matches so far this year. And he also said Dragunov brings a unique level of physicality, intensity, and unique selling. He was aided by a crowd that was just hot for everything on the show, with the exception of Gable Stevenson. So drop that in there. But man, you talk about Dragunov being a guy you can bring up to the main roster. You talk about the presence of a guy like Gunther. They have a history that they work together. Would be awesome to see him kind of emerge from this NXT situation, kind of come to the main roster, because Carmelo Hayes too. I mean, this was a great big NXT match akin to the old Black and Gold days.
Oh man, I'm so in on Dragunov, man. This guy, he he has everything. The facials, the intensity. I forget the segment it was in the lead up to this match, but he came out in the suit and he looked like a made man to me. I'm so used to seeing him just absolutely psychotic in the ring with his facials and the, like Dave said, the way he sells. Carmelo Hayes is awesome, but if it comes down to these two, I am a Dragunov guy through and through. He has that same stature of a Gunther, but
For
he's
sure.
totally different in his character. But man, I hope they do not mess this dude up if he comes to the main roster, because Dragunov is he's the real deal, man. He is the real deal.
So his performer of the week was surprisingly Rocky Romero. So I had to look into this because I obviously didn't watch any of the CMLL stuff, but he said the Mascara Dorado 2.0 push that they're giving Rocky Romero continued on CML as he became the youngest and newest star ever to win the Leyenda de Plata tournament. So actually Rocky Romero, I'm sorry, the Mascara Dorada is the name. So he beat Rocky Romero in 20 minutes and 19 seconds with a shooting star press in the main event. So Romero stole the trophy, teased breaking it, but gave it back. Meltzer said most have called this match the best match in Mexico this year, with the first Volador Jr. versus Romero match as the two best. He gave it 4 3/4 star, being Meltzer. And he said the performance by Romero was match of the year contender level. Dorada did some of the great moves, but it was Romero holding it together, but he was doing more of an American-Japanese style with some of the lucha opposed to strictly lucha, and the audience ate it up. So time and place, environment, all that good stuff. But Rocky Romero, kind of an understated guy. We see him in AEW. He's part of the best friend stuff for a bit. And we forget how really young he is and how talented he is because he wasn't really presented in the North American scene on our side of things. But seeing him here, because the diametric difference of the styles, I think that's what the Mexican crowd really feeds into. There's a lot to be said about he's out there working the American-Japanese style where they're used to seeing lucha, and it just vibed with them. And like sometimes the contrast of styles is all you need to do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans don't even realize Rocky is that good in the ring, because I know with a lot of people he was looked at as just kind of a conduit for AEW and New Japan working together. He's kind of that he's tapped into Gato and the booking in New Japan and bringing guys in from America to New Japan, but this guy can go. His stuff with Chaos, I love Rocky.
With that being said, let's get to the week ahead and talk about all the wrestling we have on dock for us.
The week ahead.
All right, so we have no matches announced for Raw tonight as it's going on, but moving to Tuesday, we have a jam-packed NXT. We have the North American title on the line, Dominic Mysterio with Rhea in his corner, defending against Dragon Lee with Dom's father, Ray, in his corner. So we're going to get a Ray appearance, a rare one on NXT. Noam Dar's Heritage Cup trophy on the line with Noam Dar defending against Tyler Bate, Braun Breaker versus Von Wagner, Mustafa Ali versus Axiom, Dragunov versus Trick Williams, Ivy Nile versus Kiana James, and Blair Davenport versus Kalani Jordan. And we're going to get the return of Tiffany Stratton. NXT kind of pulling out all the punches here on Tuesday, trying their best to pop a rating, and they've kind of been vibing a little bit. And it continues. The North American Championship kind of leading the way, but there's some good depth here.
Yeah, I mean, the Tyler Bate Heritage Cup match against Noam Dar will probably be a fun one to watch. And seeing Ray opposite Dominic Mysterio, even though he's just in the corner of Dragon Lee, I like what they're doing, the philosophy of trying to pull that rating, bringing in stars. But until you can pull those ratings on your own without bringing main roster people down, there's always going to be an asterisk next to those ratings.
On AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, we got the Hardys taking on the Young Bucks. This is a rematch from many years ago. Think about WrestleMania weekend, the night before the Hardys came back. Yeah. So I can't wait to see this. MJF and Adam Cole appear, and we get the BCC, John Moxley and Claudio taking on the Lucha Brothers, and the FTW Championship on the line, Jack Perry versus Rob Van Dam. So it's some good shit on Dynamite. On Thursday, we have Impact on Access, ABC, Ace Austin and Chris Bay versus Rich Swann and Sami Callihan in a tag team title eliminator tournament semifinal. Kushida versus Mike Bailey, Dirty Dango versus Bhupinder Guhar, Jody Threat versus Alicia Edwards, and we're going to get the debut of Samurai Del Sol, aka Kalisto, teaming with Laredo Kid and Black Taurus versus Moose, Bully Ray, and Brian Meyer. So you guys can get all your impact-filled Thursday night 10-10, myself and Colton. Can't wait for this. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that looks like a good card too, man. Kushida, Mike Bailey, sign me up.
We also on SmackDown on Friday, we have the U.S. Championship that kind of was excess off of SummerSlam. Austin Theory defending against Santos Escobar. And we're going to get AJ Styles versus Karrion Kross, which was also built up on SummerSlam with Karrion Kross attacking AJ Styles after he was eliminated and whatever. But yeah, some SmackDown stuff. And of course, the Bloodline Fallout. I'm sure they're going to dedicate 45 to 50 minutes to that, figuring out why Jimmy Uso turned on his brother. But, tune in for SmackDown.
Yeah, give me a reason why Jimmy did this. And for the love of God, man, do something with Karrion. I mean, why bring him back? He's good as Killer Kross. Do something with the guy.
You said it, man. I mean, want to talk about just mid-card hell?
I get why no WWE fan thinks he's worth a damn, because the way he has something. I'm telling you,
well, that's the danger you were talking about before, the 50-50 booking. You put this in the perception of a guy like Gunther with the same booking as Karrion. It could be the same situation. Reverse the roles. You can have Karrion being a dominant IC champion, and people would be like, Karrion's the best IC champion of all time. Not because Karrion has the ability to do it. It's just presentation-wise, it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Collision on Saturday, CMFTR versus House of Black for the trios titles. I'm sure we're going to get a little bit more. I mean, we didn't even talk about Collision with Ricky Steamboat being attacked by Ricky Starks, which is fucking awesome. And we get the old school Ricky Steamboat theme song.
FTR calling out the Young Bucks.
That was awesome. So we're going to get them at All In, which is good stuff. But this is another step in the direction. I mean, if you put the trios titles on CMFTR, I mean, you could hypothetically at All Out set a table up for the Elite versus CMFTR for the trios titles as God intended.
Yeah, man, it could happen. You never know.
And we also have some other pay-per-views to look forward to. We have Impact Emergence on 8/27. We have the Multiverse show happening on 8/20. We also have the New Japan Pro Wrestling All-Star Junior Festival from the ECW Arena. Some good stuff there, but we'll preview those as those are coming up because, they're not this week pending. So that's all we got for you guys. So before we go, obviously, Chad, let's get some plugs in about where they can find all our good stuff.
Everything's at theturnbuckletavern.com. Go there. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. That's our main hubs. There's shows almost every day of the week there. I think every day of the week there's an audio drop or a video drop. Check it out. We got you covered. Impact, AEW, WWE figures with Fig Night on Tuesdays. Every show represented. Go show all the fellas some love. They put their heart and soul and time, precious time into this shit. So give us some love, give us some reviews. We appreciate it.
Yeah, quickly before we go, of course, watch Shot Nostalgia on Friday. We're finishing up Smoky Mountain Wrestling 1994. But if you're in the Massachusetts area, Amesbury, Massachusetts, from the Lafayette Club, Rad Pro Wrestling, Birds of a Feather, I'll be in the building doing ring announcing for first time working with the promotion. I'm looking forward to it. It's a blast from the past, kind of fits into the Shot Nostalgia theme. It's circa 1994 style wrestling where it's going to be a good time. So come check it out. 5-on-5 battle pit match is main eventing. Going to be an awesome time. And again, if you're in the area, I'm going to have some stuff, some tavern stickers. I have a merch table, but come say hi if you're listening with an earshot of this conversation. Make sure you supporting independent wrestling. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And if you guys, I never plug this, but if you guys do like movies, we have a sister site, Broken VCR. It's only on Apple and Spotify. If you guys love movies, give it a follow. It's me and Hawk every week talking a movie. A lot of fun on there. And this week we're having 2 episodes. It's our first bonus episode week. We review Oppenheimer on Friday.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, check us out. Broken VCR, Apple, Spotify every Tuesday.
Yep. And that's all we got, man. Chad, lead us out, and you guys enjoy pro wrestling. Be nice to each other, and stop being tribalistic, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Love it all, man. We love it all. But until the next Monday, when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from those pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.